Well, so much for instructions on how to fix this thing. I've set this in the fuselage here in the airframe, and I've got the tube over here on the frame and through the seat, and it sticks through the seat there about a ½ an inch or so, which is not too bad. And this is the little tag here that the flap fits onto. The flap cable fits onto. But this spacer that they had to make here is too long. I'm going to have to cut it off a little bit to fit in there. And I've got it, it's almost exactly 2 inches. So now I can't move this over like this, because then this arm here, this connector for the flap cable is sticking out too far, so this has got to be this way. But the real problem has to do with this handle, the flap handle itself. It runs into the side of the fuselage here. When it's up against this side, it's going to runs into this one diagonal here. There's a lot more of an angle between this fuselage main section here and where it goes up to meet the standard width fuselage standard width engine mount, and so it comes out here, but this angle is just too much, and it's going to run into the sidewall here. So there's 2 things that we can do about that. One, either heat up that flap handle and bend it over a little bit, take some of the bend out of it rather. So it's got a pretty good bend in it right here. It could straighten that out a little bit. Or we can take this 2-inch spacer, cut this tube and put this 2-inch spacer in here, and that would put the flap handle back over here, where then I wouldn't have to do anything with this ratchet to change it. The way it stands right now, we got to change this ratchet, this mounting point for the ratchet here too. And I could get a wide body flap handle. I see that Dakota Cub makes a wide body flap handle. They only want about $450 plus $100 and some shipping for it. So I'm sure Airframes also has one. In fact, I saw they had a standard one, and it was about $450 or $500 too. So that seems a little bit excessive for this piece of tubing that I got here, the 7/8 inch tubing that the handle is made out of. That piece cost $3 and something from Aircrew Spruce for a foot of it, and this that was a 7/8 inch piece. The 3/4 inch piece cost, I don't know, $1.50 or $2, something like that. So you've got about let's say $10 worth of material in here total, and a couple hours worth of work. Seems like half that price would be more than enough. About the only way I'm going to make this flap handle work is to cut it and splice in this section here, this 2-inch section that they called out for to fit on this end. Well, if I do it this way, like they said in the instructions, then this handle is going to run into the framework on the fuselage. If I move this over by splicing in this piece, 2-inch piece that they called for, and it's the only way I can figure out to make this work, and that'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone. One, it'll get this handle over where it doesn't interfere with the frame on the fuselage forward of the front seat, and 2, it'll put this ratchet back over to where it ties into the seat like it's supposed to. So I won't have to modify the seat if I do that. I'm trying to figure out a way to lay this out. I'm still not sure exactly what I'm going to do. I was thinking about building some kind of a jig. We've got to keep the relationship between this, which is where the flap cable hooks onto, and the handle. We have to keep that relationship the same. Oh, one of the ways to do that would be to make some kind of a jig to mount this in, so that when I weld it, this stuff stays the same. Just if I see that, lay that flat down on the table like that, then this ear sticks up. I could just make something and tie into this ear here to keep it the right distance off the ground. Now, I was looking for a piece of 3/4 inch copper tubing to run down that to use as a backup for welding that so that it doesn't stick, and to line that up. But I could probably go ahead and put this old chrome tube in there and use that, and to make my spots on there. Once I get that spotted on there, then I don't have to worry about the penetration. I could pull that out. And then I went and got a bottle of argon. So I'll have to set my welder up and practice welding. It's been a while since I've run. I'm going to use the TIG welder, TIG that, and it's been a while since I've practiced. So here's the piece that I cut that was supposed to be 2 inches. You can see it's almost exactly 2 inches, and this is how much too big it is. Well, pretty close to exactly 1/4 inch too long to fit in there. Now this piece right here was supposed to be 10 inches, and I cut it 10 inches. It's just a longer rule. Okay, here's a 12-inch rule, and you can see it's just a little bit over 10 inches. But there's how much hangs out on it. Now let's measure it from this end here, so it's almost a 1/2 inch. It's over, well, it is a 1/2 inch, 9/16 of an inch too long. And I want to cut this in half, and I want to make my line as straight as possible so that I don't have to have any big gaps or anything there when I start welding together and get anything cockeyed or setting off. I don't have a very good eye when it comes to a straight line. I used one of these tubes to slide over this piece to make this line around there to get it fairly straight, and then because the tube wasn't exactly cut straight, I just rolled this around and used the same point on the tube to make my mark, and that came out pretty good. This one here, I just put it inside this tube and made my mark around that. That's pretty square on that end, but you can't really do it in here. You can't slide anything over that. I took a piece of paper, and this is just a notepad that I have from years ago from the railroad train lineup, and it was too wide, so I just cut one in half. And it doesn't make any difference how straight the one side is, just as long as you got one good straight edge here. And then you take the straight edge and just start wrapping it around this tube and get the edges to line up together. Now this one doubles over itself a couple times, so it's pretty accurate that way. All my edges all line up together. So now I can make a line around there, and it'll be a pretty straight line. All I have to do is cut a straight line, just follow that edge. In fact, I can just leave that paper attached there and cut right along it, and I'll just go ahead and cut along it and just rotate this in the vise as I'm cutting it, so I get my hacksaw to follow that line as close as I can, and then we can true it up on the disc sander. We got a plate shear out. It's an 8-inch plate shear from Grizzly. The plate that I've got is just a piece of I think it's 3/32, something I got out of the metal bin at I like to carry at Home Depot and places like that, hardware stores. I think I got it at Alaska Industrial Hardware. Well, I cut some pieces off of it, and at first I just made a random cut on it and cut it into chunks, and then I measured it off into 3-inch strips and cut 3-inch cubes out of it. But anyway, that is why that's there. That stuff's just too thick to cut on my little 3-in-1 shear. I went and got a bottle of gas, argon, got it set up there, and dug the welder out and got it all hooked up. There's my welding station there. It's just a piece of sheet metal. I think this is a scrap off of an old excavator that I had that I cleaned the paint off of and stuff. And I've got it set up on some fire brick on that Black & Decker workmate table. And I got all my gear out, so I'm ready to go. I've got the chair over there I had to dig out of the snowbank, so I've got to wait for it to dry out before I sit my butt down on it. And I've got everything all lined up to start practicing welding. I've actually got several things that I need to weld here while I'm doing this. Of course, that flap handle is the one thing. I've got to cut it and weld it, and then I've got to make a carriage for the fuselage, the airplane, kind of like gear for it. Not landing gear, but just gear that we can handle it on the land with, so that when I get done putting the fabric on it and stuff here, we can roll it and run it down to the hangar to work on it down there to get it ready to put the wings on and stuff. I don't, once I get everything all set up on it, I don't want to have to manhandle it and carry it by hand and take a chance on scuffing everything up. So I'm going to make a rolling gear for it, and then I've got to do some repairs on the air box for the back seat heat. So the first thing I'm going to do is run a whole bunch of practice beads, just start practicing. Well, I've been practicing my welds, and they've been getting better, but I'm never going to be a very good welder. I'm never going to have the perfect welds like the ones I aspire to that you see on YouTube videos from Welding Tips and Tricks and Weld.com and some of these other ones that we've got. But I was doing better. I got some 16th inch filler rod, and that worked a lot better. I was using the stainless steel, and I could get 16th inch, and I could get pretty good beads with it. But I went ahead and got some, what is that, 70 S6 or whatever it is. I was using 3/32, but it was just too hot for this thin metal. So this stuff is working a lot better, and I've been doing pretty good with it. I cut some test pieces here off of a piece of round stock. This is the 7/8 that was left over. This is the plug that goes between these two pieces, and this is the pieces that were left over from that. So I cut a bunch of short pieces off of that. I'm going to practice on those, and then I went ahead and cut this flap handle off and my little filler plug off. I'm going to tape those up and make sure they fit in the airframe before I do anything else, but I'm done practicing on flat stock for now. I'm going to go ahead and practice on some of this round stuff and see how I do on it before I go ahead and do the flap handle. But I'm kind of committed here now because I did go ahead and cut the flap handle, and I'm using an Everlast 210 EGBT, whatever the hell the thing is, and I was running it at 70 amps with a foot pedal, and probably less than that for most of this welds. Like I said, I'm getting better at it. I'm never going to be great at it. I could practice every day till doomsday, and I still wouldn't be as good as these guys that I aspire to, but I'm going to be good enough to get this done anyway. Well, I started practicing on welding the tubing, and this is some piece of 7/8 4130 tubing, and this is what I'm going to weld in for the plug in the flap handle. So they're not real pretty, but they're going to be functional. We keep practicing on it, I'll get a little bit better. One of the things I want to avoid is over penetration, because this, well, I can always clean it out the inside of it, but the less I have to clean out on the inside, the better. There's these pieces that are going to have to pivot on another piece, on a piece of 3/4 inch stock that's going to go through the middle of it. So I want to try to keep them as clean as possible on the inside. Now, this first one I did pretty good on it. This second one, I got it too hot. I got it too much penetration on it. I got them lined up pretty good. I spotted them, just made a quick spot on them on one side, and then straightened them out and spotted them on the opposite side, spotted them a couple ways around there, then welded them. We got another piece here I can weld on. Here, another short stub, and then I've got a couple more here that I can practice on. So I'll get a little bit more practice on this stuff before I attack the flap handle itself and see if I can't get it down a little better. Structurally they're going to be okay, but I think I'm getting it a little bit too hot and getting a little over penetration. I've been using some rod on it, but I don't need a heck of a lot of rod, filler rod. But one of the problems is figuring out how to line these up. I was doing them like this, where I was going here and just doing straight on and just doing a little bit at a time, and it actually worked better to go backwards for me than it did to come this way. I did those first, and then I turned them sideways, and then I was doing them this way, but I wound up getting them so that my nozzle was pointed too far away, so I've got to get that straightened out, get that figured out. We're getting it. Well, I got all my pieces that I cut welded together. I got one tube, and it actually, the last welds didn't turn out too bad, so I guess I can procrastinate no more. I'm going to have to go ahead and clean this table off and get my flap handle out and go ahead and do it.